a presidential material. You should not only stay Emmanuel Macron's election as the youngest French president since Napoleon is hardly news to anyone anymore. But barely days after the bulk of his compatriots bestowed confidence on the 39-year-old, we ask, what's in Macron's election win for Africa, and particularly Cameroon? And then staying on in the same vein, we ask, will Cameroon organize its own presidential poll next year? And if yes, are the likes of Cabral Libby presidential material? Or in other words, can the Macron phenomenon be replicated in Cameroon? This is Tough Talk, and we begin deliberations in a jiffy. The Tough Talkers are on the panel once again after a week-long break.
Yes.
It was a deserved rest by Elie Smith.
Yes, sir. It was really one. You know, we after working, we need to have a rest. I mean, it seems as if God also had a rest on the seventh day.
After creation.
After creation.
Keja Henry Tembe, welcome once again.
Thanks very much, Divine. Good morning to our televiewers, and we hope that you will probably forgive us for the sins we never committed.
For the Black Cats we had all through last week, who are on again, and we're going to be on for as long as God permits. Elie Smith was saying it. So some have referred to it as a cosmetic institution with very little or nothing at all to write home about since its establishment in April 2013. Others have termed it a rest room inundated with individuals long past the retirement age. I'm actually referring to Cameroon Senate, Elie Smith. But even without an abode to call its own, do you have any trust or respect for the Cameroon Senate?
No, I don't have any trust for the Cameroon Senate, just as I don't also have it for any other institution in this country. Then I also think that the Senate, honestly speaking, is a waste of money.
Okay.
We don't have money. We don't always need to replicate what is somewhere or in other parts of the world, like let's say in France or in the United States. We are an underdeveloped country, a poor country. That resource is invested in people who are not even worthy of what they are, who do not even love Cameroonians, who are so corrupt. I think it was really a waste of money, and it is time for it to be cancelled out, because I think it was
disbanded.
Disbanded because it was
the Senate.
Of course, yes, because disbanding is not as though we are going to be the first people to, or I am going to be the first person to have such an idea. Macky Sall, when he was elected as president of Senegal, he also said the Senate was a waste of money, that he wanted it to be disbanded. And if it is done that way, there's no problem. I think it has to be disbanded. Actually,
we're having images of the National Assembly on our screen, but we're really talking about the Senate. They are all legislative structures for Cameroon, Keja Henry. The Senate in particular clocked 4 years old.
Yes, clocked 4 years old. You know, that is...
Are you thinking in the same vein that it's a worthless structure like Elie Smith?
Well, I want to believe it's a worthless structure, because whatever the Senate does, whatever the lower house does, the Senate just approves. We've never seen a case where there are fierce debates at the Senate. So it becomes just a replica of the lower house of assembly, a means to, like Elie was putting, consume huge chunks of government budget. We are talking about the coffers being dry. We are talking about the teachers not being paid, those who left school. We are talking about projects to be realized. But we discovered that the Senate is consuming a lot of money, because there are a lot of money, 100 of them. 100 of them.
Remember, 30 of them are actually appointed by the president, and 70 are elected.
Now let me ask you a question. What has the senator in Balikumba done? What has Senator Teche done? What has Senator Tabetando done? What has Senator Musonge done? What has Senator Belamoki done?
Ex-Senator Musonge, because he's no longer there, he currently heads the
no, he's still a senator, sir.
Bilingualism and multiculturalism.
He is a senator. His mandate is uncool. His mandate is still on. So he remains a senator. But the question is, what have they done? Ask yourself the question. If you have a senator in your area, ask yourself the question, what has that senator done? Because all the bills that leave the lower house, you know, to the upper house, they pass like what Freshman calls, comme la lettre à la poste.
Okay.
They don't debate on the bills, and so they just give their okay.
Now, Elie Smith, this is a structure with an annual budget of 15.2 billion CFA francs. Salaries range from between 900,000 CFA francs to 1 million CFA francs. Now, critics are emphatic that it is a structure that has no other function than rubber stamping. Which would you prefer, the National Assembly or the Senate?
I would prefer the National Assembly, because I might have said initially that I have no respect for any of both institutions, but at least at the National Assembly, as I think Kejan said something, you have debates. We saw an example recently of Joseph Wirba. There have been other instances. We have seen a member of parliament such as Martin Oyono of the Ocean Division, that is Kribi, if I'm not wrong. But at the Senate, I've never seen any person do anything, talk anything. Everything is that whenever something comes from the lower house of parliament, when it goes there, it is just rubber stamp.
No readjustments, no objections raised. Kejan Henry, what can explain such a dossier from such an institution that was, you know, clamored for with a lot of
yes, people clamored
hunger
for it, and we saw it coming. In fact, they had to prepare such that, because you know the parliament, the Senate is an indirect suffrage. Is an indirect suffrage. Now those MPs and you know municipal councillors who voted for the senators were already a majority CPD members of parliament, so you could understand what happened. And they had already planned to have a majority. Remember that during the last legislative and in fact it was twin election, municipal and legislative elections, the CPDM won a majority, even in some of the bastions of the Social Democratic Front, and even the UPC and the other opposition party. Now they are aligned with the NUDP party of Belibo Maigari and the rest, their allies. It is very normal that they had the majority and they could crush along as they move. So nobody could object anything that came to the Senate. So
constitutionally speaking, the senatorial elections are slated for April next year, if elections ever come to pass in Cameroon next year, 2018. Do you think it's time for big changes to be made, at least for the 70 who are elected by Cameroonians?
Of course, there should be some changes. I think if the government is really serious, I think there is need for reforms. When people are talking about looking at the way this country works, it is functioning, I think it also has to do something with how the Senate is created, how it functions. When you have people, some 70 elected by Cameroonians for indirect suffrage, and others appointed by the President of the Republic, I think it is not fair. Even in the United Kingdom, which is older in terms of human rights, in terms of democracy than Cameroon, there are some people who think that the House of Lords should be scrapped. Whereas the House of Lords, they are much more active than our Senate here. So I think the Senate, honestly speaking, it has no place to be. The only time I hear them is when there's this squabble between Nyat Njifenji Marcel and Kabayege Jibril, disputing who is the first or the second personality of the country.
Or sometimes, Henry, when they need money for fuel, when they need new cars, that's when you hear them growing.
Yes, when they need new cars, you don't forget that the different commissions or committees, it depends on which context you are, in the lower house and upper house of assembly, always battle for those kickbacks. But then I think that is the only noise they make when you hear about the parliament. Or recently you heard that because of the Anglophone problem, that is when the parliamentarians, the senators, some senators came out. And of course, you know, Mbela Moke, I think all through this particular crisis, has spoken only once. And the only thing Mbela Moke said, which was the only positive, and I recommend him for that, was the fact that he condemned those other members of the Central Committee of the CPDM party who went to the Southwest region and preached hate language and preached xenophobic language. So he reminded them, if you are preaching like that, then you are against Mr. Biya, who is preaching unity. I think that was the only thing he said. He's been quiet all along, and probably we should recommend him for that. Rather than spilling the beans, Take the case of Tabetando, they went and they did what they did in Manu, Musonga did what he did in Fako, and the rest of them. So I think it is time we revisit, overhaul the Senate, try to see if they have something to give to Cameroonians.
You have a chance to do that when the senatorial elections come up next week. Remember, next year. Remember, next year we're also expected to have the council elections. Plus, the big one is the presidential poll. We'll be coming to that in the second part of the show. Just to remind you that on the machines is Njilo, Donald, and behind the cameras is Emmanuel Bevirka. When we come back, we'll be attacking our first major talking point for today. Relations between France and its former African colonies only timidly claimed the headlines in the lead-up to the May 7 presidential poll, which saw 39-year-old Emmanuel Macron emerge as France's youngest leader after Napoleon, or since Napoleon. So the logical salvo-setting question to me, Kejan Henry, is: should Africans in general and Cameroonians in particular be concerned about elections in France?
If we are concerned, it should be for diplomatic reasons. Well, if we are concerned, it's because we are concerned about the operations of the world, global affairs, the new world order. But if we are concerned, it should be whether or not Cameroonian or Cameroon as France's, chop farm should benefit.
Can you explain that, chop farm? I know people who speak pidgin English will understand, but not everybody
Not
understands.
everybody. Where France, where France sap, to feed fat.
In other words, you are referring to the former African French colonies in Africa
as a French colony, as a reserve for France. Don't forget that even the French people are very conscious of the fact that no Africa, no France. So we are concerned whether or not our situation will be better off, because we are tied with a lot of colonial pacts and so on and so forth. So, but then ask the common man on the street or the ordinary person in the counties whether or not he knows anything about France and the French elections, what they bring to them. I think they will tell you they don't have anything to do with that.
But when it comes to political tensions in Cameroon, remember, every now and then the SDF has called for, well, several times in the past, called for the boycott of French products like, beer made in Cameroon by French companies and so on. Elie Smith, one person who was very concerned about who will govern France after the May 7 presidential poll was definitely Cameroon's own President Paul Biya. And on Monday, he extended a missive to President-elect Emmanuel Macron, congratulating him for the win and also indicating that he is open, ready, and willing to work with Macron towards opening new horizons between for French-Cameroon relations. Now, this is like the French grip, like Kejan was saying on Cameroon, is hardly ever going to go away.
Yeah, it's not going to go away because, first of all, Paul Biya became president of Cameroon because of France's support. And when Paul Biya, at a certain point in time, wanted to change loyalties, the French masterminded a number of assassinations in this country and also helped to destabilize this country or destabilize Paul Biya. So it's normal. What I'm saying is not a kind of imagination that I'm just trying to float around. If you read a book written by Pierre Elie, he was a former police commissioner here.
That's a Cameroonian.
It's a Cameroonian. And the title of that book is in French, it's called Dossier Noir sur le Cameroun. And he explains, for those, if you can go on Google and have something, he explains, for example, Mveng was killed here by the French. There are a number of assassinations that took place here.
Mveng, the Reverend Father.
Exactly.
The Reverend, yeah.
There are a number of assassinations that took place here simply because at a certain point in time, Biya wanted to change loyalties, especially when Biya decided to bring the Israel in this country in terms of security and everybody who sees Israel's footpath somewhere, and any French strategist who sees Israel's footpath somewhere knows that America is following behind. Now, Paul Biya, is normal for him to want to ask for a horizon. I think that he should be ashamed. He's not the only person. Denis Sassou Nguesso sent the same missive. It only shows how close the relationship between French-speaking African despots and France is, and that is the problem lies with the ambiguity of Macron. There are a lot of people who are so happy about him, but I think we shall get there. I think it is ambiguous, but let's wait and see. It is, well, in diplomatic terms, I think it's normal for a president to extend such missives. Donald Trump did it, but Donald Trump can do it because it is a democracy. And Cameroon, Biya doing it, I think Biya should be ashamed that his son is going to come and give him instructions in the days that comes ahead.
Yeah, I want to cue in from your last phrase. His son should be ashamed. He should be ashamed to be congratulating his son, in quotes, for an election win in France. Kejan Henry, there should be no problem in keeping with the tacit norms of diplomacy. It's only normal that the president of the Republic of Cameroon, which enjoys such bilateral ties with France, should congratulate the president-elect.
Well, Levan, let me just put
there shouldn't be any
cause for concern. It's diplomacy. Even if Macron were 25, we've known Valentine Strasser, who took over the helm of power at the age of 27 and 26. Was 26. Valentine Strasser was 26 years old. Yes, he arrogated, as you and I know, but taking instructions from your son, it's a very disgraceful one. I think sometimes, let me just take a simple scenario. What would happen if tomorrow, after about 15, 16 years in the practice, and then you find a small Vanessa who is here at the corridors, giving me the instruction as my editor-in-chief, whereas I'm supposed to pull out from the scenario.
Isn't that where the world goes wrong?
And
because,
that is where,
because a governing gerontocracy like what some claim is governing Cameroon.
People don't want to withdraw from the scene. Shakespeare made it very clear. We all play our part and quit when the time comes. Are we saying that because people have been sending messages and pictures of governments that have been changing hands, for the past for the past 56 or 57 years since independence, and we look at countries like Nigeria, which is neighboring. I think Nigeria, despite the military coups, have had about 14 heads of state. I think if destiny or the nature does what it does, surprisingly, Buhari, though nobody is praying for that, might quit and leave it to Professor Osibajo. Now, you ask the question, they'll be sitting in the France-Afrique summit. There'll be a relationship. When President Biya will pay a visit to France in the coming days or weeks or months, and the son, when you talk about the son, I mean,
son in quotes. The
son in quotes will come. We're waiting for him because he will never go out there to welcome the president at the airport. But now when Macron announces a visit to Cameroon, President Paul Biya will be jettisoned from the Unity Palace, and they will block all the roads from to the airport for probably the whole day, and then they will send out some Cameroonians who will frustrate businesses and civil servants who will be chasing files in Yaoundé, because the major road just cuts across the belly of the country, of the city, to welcome his son Macron. Well, that is nature, that is the design. But don't forget that he had said it all along when the former president François Hollande was here, that it's not he who wishes to stay in power for long, but he who can
stays in power for that long.
That good.
But he who can.
Now,
Elie Smith, reading between the lines and following President Paul Biya's message of congratulations to Macron, some critics have quickly rushed to the conclusion that President Biya is keen on befriending Macron because relations between President Biya would have been better off with Marine Le Pen, who has been in the system for quite a long time, because Macron is a newcomer, relatively speaking, a newcomer.
No, I don't think Biya is not the first person doing that. I was giving an example here that Denis Sassou Nguesso had done the same.
Macky Sall did the same, presidents of Mali, Guinea, Niger.
All of the French-speaking African countries have done the same.
Yeah, Donald Trump did it. Abe of Japan has done it. Merkel has done it. It's normal in diplomacy. Now, those who claim that the relationship would have been better with Marine Le Pen,
Cameroon-France relations.
Cameroon-France would have been better with Marine Le Pen. I don't know what they really mean, what they're really talking about, because if you look at the phrases or the declaration of Marine Le Pen vis-a-vis the presence of French-speaking Africa, I think would have spelled disaster.
Okay.
Because, and then there is one, the vice president of the...
Elie, I'm sorry, yes. I'm just going to interrupt you very briefly.
No problem. Out there. Yes.
That Marine Le Pen's election as French president would have spelled disaster for Africa, but she was in France just before the second round of the election. Marine Le Pen
she went in Chad.
Chad, good.
Yes, but she
Macron came to Algeria.
Yes, Macron came to Algeria. Marine Le Pen went to Chad. You have to understand that those people are strategists. They do that for national internal consumption to prop up their international image. She came to Chad not to visit Idriss Déby, even though she went to see Idriss Déby. She came to Chad to visit what they call the
Operation Barkhane.
That have 3,000 forces in Chad. She was trying to send a message of security, because it was kind of ambiguous when she came, because she was saying she's fighting against terrorism. And the Barkhane, and they're in Chad for what? They are there to fight against Boko Haram, fight against ACME, fight against the legions of terrorist groups that are populating the Sahel and Saharan region of Africa. I think she came there for her own personal image. But now I was trying to tell you something, that if you listen or if you have followed the Twitter conversation between Elie, who is the vice president of the National Front in France.
Which the nomenclature has been changed. That was on Monday.
Yes,
Macron has resigned as head of the movement Hamas.
Yes, I was talking about the National Front first. I was talking about Marine Le Pen. Yes, I was talking about Marine Le Pen. If you look at the conversation, Twitter conversation between Elie, who is the vice president of the Front National, and the Minister of Communications of the Republic of Congo, Thierry Mungala, it is something which spells very bad for most African dictators in French-speaking Africa. It has never been done by established political parties. I understand that because of the past of the far right, whatever thing the far right says or does, people seem to say it is nothing, they are racist, they are whatever. But I think that had it been the National Front, Marine Le Pen had won the elections, it would not have been good for French-speaking African leaders.
Okay.
But I don't think it is the same thing that is going to happen with Macron, for the simple reason that Macron's presidential ambitions began 9 years ago.
Okay.
And those who are supporting Macron, you have
big business
Vincent Bolloré, you have Bouygues, in fact you have the banking, Rothschild, you have the banking and financial industrial establishment who are supporting Macron. And this group of people are the ones who have been creating problems in French-speaking Africa. If you have Total, if you have Vincent Bolloré, who controls the logistics,
all the ports of across West Africa,
who finances most African despots, then what do you expect from someone like Macron?
Thanks, Elie Smith, for making that clarification. Of course, I was getting it a bit wrong. Macron actually resigned from the helm of the Hamas movement. And, well, the reason is that he wants to become president or leader of all French people and not only of a movement. Keja Henry, Elie was mentioning it a couple of minutes ago. Some consider the extension of messages of congratulations to Macron as a shameless reiteration of Francophone Africa's allegiance to France. The question I'm putting to you straight on is, can President Paul Biya or any other leader of the Francophone African countries afford to break ties with France and expect to survive as a president?
Never. Well, it's been very clear, because don't forget the gymnastics, the diplomatic gymnastics they played, you know, when the issue of splitting away from the French franc came up, when discussions were going on. And don't forget why Christine Lagarde came to Cameroon, you know, on the ticket of the French government.
That's a French woman.
Good, that's a French woman, but she was not coming as a World Bank official. She came under the cover of the World Bank, but as a French
IMF
of IMF, rather,
International
Monetary Fund, under the cover of the International Monetary Fund, but as a French woman, you know, to put forth arguments that, you know, if we leave the CFA franc zone, it will be disastrous economically for us. But then whoever dares or ventures to, step bounds to try to break ties with the French might probably have it, very hot.
Okay.
Because we should make things very clear. Questions are coming up. What Africans or Cameroonians will gain from France, when a new president comes. Nobody has gained anything, or the Africans have never gained anything from Mitterrand. They have never gained anything from Chirac, from Sarkozy, from Francois Hollande, right up to Macron. And they will never get anything.
Cameroon has been reaping huge sums of money in terms of development aid from France. When you look at the Agence Française de Développement,
compare and
France, billions, hundreds of them.
Divan just cast a panoramic view over Mali. I think Elie just came back from Mali recently, and look at the pace of development in Mali and compare with the pace of development in Cameroon. Look at Côte d'Ivoire, look at Senegal. The infrastructures that are currently going on. Now you put our context that very well, you talk of the delays, because take the bridge over the River Vuri. Yes, President Biya laid the foundation stone. In fact, that was not even necessary to lay the foundation stone. The money that was spent for that ceremony alone could have constructed something useful for the people.
Could have built a bridge at a cock on the border with Nigeria.
Why not? The bridge is already there. But you see, by the African Development Bank. But like you are seeing, Côte d'Ivoire, Mali has constructed about 3 bridges, in under 3 years of the mandate. The same bridge that we have here over River Vuri that is spanning 4 years now. So what are we talking about?
Okay, now I'll stay with you, Henry, and I want you to be brief on this because I got Elie's impressions on the same issue. Le Pen, Marine, may have been considered overly protectionist, while Macron was considered more open and more pro-Euro, more pro-globalization. But who would you have preferred to see win the election in France, Macron or Le Pen? Yes,
I would have loved to have a woman. I would have loved to have a woman because I'm looking now as a woman. I would have loved to see what Le Pen would have to do with Angela Merkel of Germany. I would have loved to see the relationship she will have with other peers of the world. I'm talking about women. I would have loved to see the government that France would have when a woman will man issues. I think that to me would have been something historic, in the eyes of the world, to see how a woman
Theresa May
handle
in
the
the
French
UK,
people.
Angela Merkel in Germany, and then
of course in Asia we have Madame Sir, am I right? Yes.
Aung San Suu Kyi, she's just an honorary president.
Yes, an honorary president.
Honorary president. Yeah, but then in Burma. So would have loved to have a woman, see a woman, how a woman rules the Republic of France. But then, the people decided otherwise. But don't forget, I think she scored about 11 million votes, which means it is not a negligible percentage at all of French people who are against Macron.
Okay, and that's fine to mention, Henry, because Elie Smith was telling us a couple of moments ago that Macron is not the newcomer that many take him to be, because his grooming has taken probably 9 years in the political system. He was under the wings of outgone President Francois Hollande for some time. Some say he's a fabric of the world financial system, just like you mentioned a couple of minutes ago. But he's not really the newcomer. And even though some say they know him and they know his parts, and you can trace it, he is a potential danger because he's not being of the old guard. We all know that Alain Juppé, Francois Fillon, they all dropped somewhere along the race to the presidency. This guy could come in and prove to be more tough than what you see on paper.
Let's wait and see, because there is this kind of euphoria around the world that say he's a young person. I would like to say something. Kejang said something about Valentine Strauss. He was 26 years old. What did he do? Nothing.
Nothing.
In the DRC, Kabila came to power. He was young. What did he do? He did nothing. When you look at Kim Jong-un in North Korea, what he has done is the worst savagery that his father never did. He killed his uncle, killed his half-brother. And now when you come even here in Africa, when we talk about the young people, most of them are the most corrupt, irresponsible set of people that we have never seen. As far as Macron is concerned, he is young. It is good for the film. He's idealistic. They say it is the victory of the youth over seniority. It's a victory of optimism over fear of the far right or populist movement moving around. Look, he's not that new. He has been there for 9 years in the making. And who fabricated him? He is called Jacques Attali. Jacques Attali is the guys, the kingmakers in France, the political and the economic establishment. Then he has followed one trajectory that most French presidents have done it. In 1974, Valéry Giscard d'Estaing was the Minister of Finance. Mr. Jacques Chirac became president, he was a Minister of Budget. Nicolas Sarkozy was Minister of Finance. He became the President of the Republic. And he has also followed the same trajectory. He's now become the President of the Republic. Because he is the man of the financial world. There's not going to be any surprises whatsoever. That is what I think.
So the status quo is going to be maintained?
I think the status quo is going to be maintained because there is this other aspect of things. Perhaps cosmetic, when he said he's going to have only about 15 ministers, divided evenly, 50 for women, 50 for men, good.
50%.
50% for men, 50% for women, good. But I think that there are some fundamental things that I don't think is going to change. For example, when you talked about what will Cameroon benefit from
his election,
I don't see what is going to benefit if, for example, if he was supported by Vincent Bolloré. And Vincent Bolloré, do you think that Vincent Bolloré will want the CPDM to leave power and then you have an SDF that is going to come, which is a nationalist party?
An unknown.
An unknown.
With the hiding and lurking dangers.
Exactly. So I think people should I want people to temper their feelings. But there's one bit of difference, a kind of correction which I wanted to make with Kejang. Kejang said Mali is developed or is developing, Ivory Coast, Senegal. Yes, those people are supported by France. Because there they have democratically elected leaders. In Ivory Coast, Ouattara came because of France, because there's this kind of devilish campaign mounted against France. In diplomacy, it's a matter of interest, Divine and Kejang. It's not a matter of sentiment, it's a matter of love.
Of course.
If it's a matter of love, yes, if it's your wife or your husband, but this thing is the interest. Wherever the French sees their interest, they defend it tooth and nail. It is that we don't know how to defend our interest. And the other thing I wish to make, because we are speaking to people and they're listening to us, Madame Lagarde did not come here because defending the CFA francs. Madame Lagarde is the head of the International Monetary Fund. The CEMAC region has been poorly managed economically. They are on the
partly due to the so-called structural adjustment proposed by the IMF.
Yes, that was between the 80s and the 90s. But now there was a windfall when we had this boom of oil, the oil boom. What did the leaders of the CEMAC region do with the windfall? What they did was that they just squandered everything. Now we are going again cap in hand to beg.
From the same
yes. And the other thing I wish you make about the CFA is not the devil also that people are trying to say. There are some good aspects with the CFA franc.
What could be good about the CFA, at least?
The good thing about the CFA franc is the stability of the currency.
At this rate?
Yes, there is, because the problem is that when you look at other currencies, since the commodity prices crisis happened, the Nigerian Naira has lost 40% of its value. The South African rand
was junk
status. The Angolan kwanza 70% of its value, and the CFA franc has remained stable. Why? Because we have this parity with the euro, and which makes that in terms of trade, we have a kind of fixed way of doing things. That's a good part of it.
Even though the fixed way of doing things ensures that a huge chunk of foreign exchange reserves are stored at the French treasury.
That is the point, Divine. That is another subject of debate, whenever
we're going to come to it
one of these days. Exactly.
Yes. Very close enough to this other edition of Tough Talk. Henrique Jean-Paul Biya, the president of Cameroon, is 84 years old. He has sat by at Etude, the presidential palace in Cameroon, and watched 4 presidents shuttle in and out of the Élysée: François Mitterrand, Jacques Chirac, Nicolas Sarkozy, and more recently, Francois Hollande. Macron is only 39, and for, well, 4 years after he was born, the only leader he can know for Cameroon is President Paul Biya. Do you expect our president, you probably want to call him the grandfather for Macron, you know, packing his bags and family and going to wish him welcome to the Elysee?
Well, it is but normal. We have been saying this thing. It makes someone laugh. It's something laughable because it makes us laugh because it's a disgraceful something, to say the least. It's a disgraceful something. But don't forget that Mr. Biya saw Giscard d'Estaing at that time was president, was the Secretary General. He saw Valéry Giscard d'Estaing. So he's really seen too many of these French presidents. But is it time to say, well, Mr. President, it's time to rest, like some people said, because there's nothing bad in that. But meeting your son or grandson, I don't know, 39, half of the age. I know a guy who is 39, was a grandfather. So we can say that, well, Macron can be his grandson. Okay. Yes, so there is nothing bad in saying that because the ages are clear. Mr. Biya was born, I think, on the 13th of February, 1933. So it has happened, but then let us wait to see what the diplomatic calendar will unveil, so that we know how relationship will exist between President Biya and President Macron. Cameroonians are waiting to hear when President Macron will come to Cameroon and how Mr. Biya will receive him. Okay. And because from every indication Mr. Biya will stay in power, it is very clear, he has already said it. And don't forget that when he received the indomitable lions and the lionesses, he said that, well, they are going to do many things in 2019, and we know eventually our calendar is 2018. So let's wait and see.
Let me give you some statistics, please. France is the world's 5th power. France's population is composed 10% foreigners. There are about 300,000 French men and women currently residing in Africa. Now, Macron's election was a source of joy, huge joy for the hundreds of thousands of Africans and some, especially Cameroonians, residing on French territory. Here's a comic input after Macron's election, because many thought if Le Pen won the poll, they would have started packing their bags to come back home. Now here's a comic input collected for us by Emmanuel Macron. I think Emma is struggling to get that feed queued up for us. In the meantime, Kejan, I'll just want to stay with you. Some have blamed France. You almost did. You actually did, for supporting rogue regimes and for, you know, conducting a kind of lopsided trade that has failed to develop countries like Cameroon.
Yeah, countries like Cameroon. I like that rogue. That's at least word, rogue regimes.
Especially in the Central Africa.
Especially in Central Africa, that's good. But ask yourself the question: why is it only in the Central African sub-region? And why is the French West African countries speeding up? Because of the openness, because they gave in to these democratic principles. Niger, Mali, Cote d'Ivoire, Senegal, Benin. Now you ask yourself the question, sometimes it becomes vexing to ask yourself to know why is Cameroon, which is the life wire of the sub-region, is lagging. And then you see the pace of development in other countries, see the way people reason, the vision that they have. And sometimes, you know, their heads of state even move to the extent of supervising some project. Okay. Because we have that tendency here that Mr. President Biya should be up there, you know, and that he has his ministers, his directors, and they should go down the field. But
yes.
But I think sometimes if things are not moving, you have to hit your hand on the table and say, no, enough is enough.
Okay. Some say, and this is how we begin to move out of here. If we don't have the comic input coming, I think the technicians are saying earlier, we'll come back to you.
No problem.
Let's get the comic input, and then we'll come with you for the conclusion from the panel.
I don't think it's going to be better because we Cameroonians, we have always been slaves to France, so I don't know if it can be better. I don't think so. It can be possible.
In Africa, in Cameroon, I don't think There will be many, many problems. Why? Because our leaders, all of them are old. Can you think a young man can debate with that type of president? Example, president who are 80, 70, with a young man who is only 39. How can they debate? He cannot move. It's a big misunderstanding. I don't think. I like the way that President Macron is a young guy. But as concerning Cameroon, concerning Africa, it's just the son of those leaders. How can you imagine I with my father can be debating nothing good. All our way is if they want them to succeed, let them leave the place to the younger one so they can debate with the French president. It can be possible. If they are only waiting that the old ones who are leading us now, you will not move. You will not move. Better leave young lead us and let the young lead France so things will move. They can understand themselves. You a child, you cannot be going and standing there. That this you should do this. The old ones here, they will not accept. So concerning Africa and Cameroon, nothing can move with the new regime from France. I think that's my contribution.
Okay, thank you.
Even there will be another cooperation between Cameroon and France. It will take another time. So that will be how the president will work with his own government. So with them, that will take another time to come up. Yeah. So that is what I can say for now. Yeah. Thank you.
We are happy Emmanuel Macron, the new president-elect of France. We know he has come, maybe as a young man, he will come with new ideas, and he's fresh, and then we think the relationship between France and Cameroon will remain the same. And for me, I see it is an example for like, let's say, for our own leaders who are tied in power. Emmanuel Macron, 39 years, and then our own leader here, 85. You can see the gap. So it is something we have to learn. I call on African president to learn from this new French president, because because we are not used to that. We are used to our old president. We are there with the old mind and all whatnot. So we are happy, and we see that he will change things now. The reasoning of Africa and France. Yeah. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Macron, 39 years old. Is it 49 years old? 39. He's still really very young. Really, it will be an example for a good example for African presidents, Cameroon in particular. Since 35 years in Cameroon, we've known only one president, and he's old. And I feel that an example, the French example, will be an opportunity for African presidents and for Cameroon in particular to know that we need fresh blood in our country, so that we start building on new ideas and forget about the old ones. Thank you.
C'est bon, les sans-papiers, vous pouvez sortir. Château Rouge, Château d'Obabès, Macadès, sortez. C'est bon. Emmanuel a gagné, c'est bon.
So in other words, the lady at the end of that compilation says because Macron has
they had gone into hiding.
Many had gone into hiding, fearing that Marine Le Pen was going to win, and then begin, chasing out the migrants. Hello, Tabby Clarkson. How is Yaoundé waking up today?
Yaoundé is fine after the heavy downpour by the early hours of
Okay. All right, yes, of course. They say beyond every dark cloud there's a silver lining. Now tell us, Tabby Clarkson, how was Macron's win over Marine Le Pen welcomed or received in Yaoundé, the Cameroonian capital?
because a youth has come to power. A boy who is just, or a man who is just 39 years old. We lead one of the biggest country in the world, that is France. And that is an inspiration to many young Cameroonians, because Cameroonians are the youth. They are very more enlightened as to what concerns the victory of Macron, and they do believe that they can take their chances. Why not challenge equally via next year's presidential election? And other Cameroonians do believe that what has happened in France is because France is a more developed country where democratic values are being actually respected, and they do believe what has happened in France cannot happen in Cameroon. That is a young or a youth of 39 years becoming president of the Republic. But the Constitution of the Republic, the Constitution of Cameroon states it clearly that if you are 35 years old, you can become president in Cameroon. Okay,
of course, and that's going to constitute a second major talking point, even though we're running way short of time. And so that's how I will just ask you the last question, Tabi Clarkson. Are there traces of discomfort within the corridors of power in Yaoundé as a result of Macron's victory?
I did not get to work.
Are people feeling, within the corridors of power in Cameroon's capital, Yaoundé, are people panicking because Macron has become president, or do you think they would have preferred Marine Le Pen?
No, true.
Hello, Tabi?
There's panic within the corridors of power, simply because this guy who is coming is a young guy.
Okay.
It's important to note that in 1982, when the president came to power, Macron was just 4 years old. He was in every school in France. They are panicking because they know that this guy has come. He is a youth. Certainly, you would like to see many young Africans too becoming president in their country. Talking about Marine Le Pen, people are saying that it's nice to know that she did not win, because she was actually there to fight the fact that France was meant for French citizens and for Africans and not for immigrants. So the defeat of Marine Le Pen is good news as what concerns Cameroonians here in Yaoundé.
Thanks very much, Tabi Clarkson. Our greetings to our colleagues out there who work with you. Stay safe and probably catch you again on Thursday, right?
It's always a pleasure to be with you, Divine Tarike.
Thanks once again. We'll be right back after the transition. Barely days ago, he was omnipresent on Cameroonian social media platforms following his declaration of intent to run for the country's presidency when constitutionally slated elections unfold next year. Our next major talking point, we ask, can the Macron phenomenon be replicated under Cameroonian skies? Elie Smith, can it?
It cannot. Simple and clear, because as I said it on Saturday, because the copycat phenomenon will not work. We need to put the enabling grounds to make it work. I told you Macron began his ambition 9 years ago, and anybody who goes to the finance ministry, there is a precedent. I've told you have Chirac, Valéry Giscard d'Estaing, Nicolas Sarkozy, and now himself. But in Cameroon here, to be sincere, the first person who declared his intention to run was Martial de Bissoc, one of our colleagues.
Yes, of Canal International.
He is a friend of mine, but when you have a person who's your friend, you have to be honest to tell him the truth. This is a man, I saw him on CRTV saying that he's the son of Paul Biya. And when people want people in the country to change. Now, does he have the necessary networks? That I doubt. I've been seeing him on social media as well, but I've told him, stop filming yourself on social media, go on the field and work.
Okay.
Is he humble enough? That I doubt. He's a friend of mine. Now, there's the other gentleman whom I admire.
And that's the one I was actually talking about in my introduction of this second major talking point, Cabral Libby.
Cabral, yeah, it is not because you are eloquent and speaking on social media, which means that you have to rule this country. The thing is, there are some prerequisites. If you want to be president of this country, it's not a joke. You need to have the networks. You need to be humble.
Those networks have tentacles stretching way beyond the country's borders?
Of course, yes. And those the individuals, perhaps I'm wrong. I've gone through and looked at them very well. I don't see the type of network they have. Perhaps it's just because they are what they are on social media here in the country. So I'm sorry to say. And the other thing to conclude is that beside the 20% of Cameroonians that are from West Cameroon who have this spirit of sacrifice,
from former Anglophone, from former West Cameroon,
the majority of Francophones are people who like to wine and dine and don't have any spirit of sacrifice. So how can you want things to change in a country with people who want to drink, have many girlfriends, and who just want to eat? I doubt that very much.
Cabral Libby Lingue's declaration was actually rendered public on April 28 from Bamenda. It triggered a spectacular online buzz, but only days later that effervescence seems to be tumbling. The question, Henry Keja Tembe, are the likes of Cabral Libby presidential material for Cameroon?
Well,
are these people to vote for?
I want you to come again.
Are these Martial Bissot, Cabral Libby? I mean, there's a new list we're struggling to compile of about 11 presidential aspirants, and most of them are newcomers. You don't see the likes of the Nijon Fundis. The question is, are these newcomers presidential material for Cameroon?
The law,
Cameroon that's hungering for change.
The law number 2012/001 of 19 August 2012, which relates to electoral code, is clear about that, and that law was amended and supplemented in 2012, that is December. And in part 4 of that same law and chapter 3, it says that all candidate or any candidate wishing to stand for presidential election in Cameroon shall declare intentions through a declaration bearing authentication. I want to find out if he stood like Elie was saying on the social media platform and say, I want to be president.
That's how some have done it. Mesanga Nyamding, the professor, actually did his own on Canal de International, program called La Reine, when he said if President Paul Biya fails to represent his candidature,
he will do his.
He will do his.
He will. I want to, but I think their signatures must have been authenticated before they do it. Now, Cabral Libby as an independent candidate, because I don't see him in a political party, yes, he can stand as an independent candidate.
According to the electoral law.
According to the electoral law.
What are the requirements?
The requirements, if Cabral Libby is having 30 million francs in his account, well, that is the fee that they have to pay.
As deposit?
As deposit, 30 million francs.
Can he independently raise that money?
Can he independently raise that money? Elie may talk about having the networks. Now, will Cabral Libby have 300 signatories, of dignitaries,
10
from each region, and people who are of moral values? I think his last visit to the Northwest region, where he capitalized on the university games, was out to make himself known. I don't think, and then having those people is not like going to one small village or small division and pick 10 people.
Some say his target has largely been Douala and Yaoundé, and we're talking particularly about Cabral Libby. And some say, just like Macron, the new French president, he lacks a solid political pedestal or foundation, Elie Smith. Is that a handicap or an advantage under Cameroonian skies?
It is a handicap. I think Cabral Libby, I have nothing against him. I admire him very much. He's doing it for the happy few. He is the darling of the intellectuals, the small agitators in Douala and Yaoundé.
Okay.
But the deep Cameroon don't know him. Even when he went to Bamenda, he went for university games. I don't know how many Anglophones know him.
Identify with him.
The thing is one thing, right? He's good. It is his right for his ambition. But I doubt whether he have the necessary network. I think people should stop comparing him with Macron. Macron, yes, he can be a kind of ambiguous person politically. Even in Africa, you don't know what he wants. Even in France, the only thing, he even went to an extra mile, wanting that it should be a European Parliament that has to decide for France, which is something the French don't want.
So that's why they consider him a sellout.
Exactly. He is.
A traitor.
He is because...
But they still vote for him.
They voted for him because there was a kind of biased atmosphere during these elections, you understand. And democracy, the thing is that since the dominant media are dominating, the marginals cannot express themselves.
Okay.
The thing, in a democracy, everybody has to be at par.
Right.
Because if France were in the United States, Marine Le Pen would have won. But the thing is that we are in France, the establishment wanted two package a kind of public relations stunt and sell it out to the people. Because when I hear Dominique Villepin say it is good for France, it's something, well, when you are supported by the economists, you have to understand that he is not a person who is for the French people. So Cabral Libi, to bring him back to Cameroon, in our Cameroonian context, I doubt he is good for the happy few, the chattering class in Yaoundé and Douala. But I don't think whether beyond he is known.
The general impression I seem to gather is that the Macron effect will be hard to import into Cameroon and Africa in general, where the governing gerontocracy appears to have sealed all the doors to the corridors of power and swallowed the keys. Keisha Henry, there's no minister in Cameroon who's below 40 years of age.
Yes, you're right. There's no minister who is below 40 years.
So can those who are below 40 aspire to become president?
They should aspire, but where would you pass? They should aspire. Don't forget that the last time when Mr. Biya reshuffled his government, they shouted that Alamid Ousmane was the youngest minister. I think.
How old is he, youngest?
Well, he was the youngest
60.
minister. That Alamid Ousmane, I think, is in his 40s or maybe early 50s, something like that. But then he was young, no doubt. But then when you compare other countries, you know, in Chad, I think there are very young ministers of 35 years or 36, 37 years. You see, but what you have to understand is when this present generation came to power, they were 24 years. They were 25, they were 26, 27, 28, 32. When they took over the power, the helm of this country, they were ruling at that very young age. Now they don't want to leave the young who are even 40 to rule, who are even 35 to rule. So it becomes a problem. They have sealed the corridors of power under the keys.
swallow the keys. Elie Smith, so the old guys, I mean, it's a situation that's prevalent not only within the ruling class, it's also even found in the opposition, where you have the Fundis, the Adamu Damjoyas, the Bello Buba Margarisa, and the old guard. They're still there. They don't relinquish power to the younger generation.
They don't relinquish power to the older generation simply because they don't want to. But on the other hand, right, we may be accusing them. Is the younger generation doing something responsible
enough?
People say that, no, most of them, to be fair, they are not hardworking. We have a generation of people who have a culture of immediacy. But there's another anthropological phenomenon happening, right? Briefly is that why would in West Africa things change and in Central Africa it doesn't change? I think we should have time to talk about it. Is the people, when you have a people who are a group of
docile,
not just docile, yeah, you can say docile or whatever, they are not hardworking, they like pleasure, hand to mouth. So how do you expect things to change? Like in the case of Cameroon, it cannot change simply because if you have a crate of beer and a bag of salt or rice, you buy somebody easily.
And they go and vote for you.
Exactly.
And that's it. The big signs are coming from the technical panel. Emmanuel Bevirika was on the cameras. And of course, Donald Njilo was behind the machines. Catch you same time on Thursday. And thanks once again for sharing part of your time with us.